So I don't know if you all can hear me, but they are running into some technical difficulties in council chambers. So working on restarting the system. So hopefully give us another minute or two and hopefully they're up and running.
Thanks for the update, Caleb. I appreciate that.
It's good to see you, Caleb. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's good to be seen. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, something's changed. I just can't put my finger on it. Looks like you got a new pair of glasses.
My hair's starting to grow back, so that's the most recent. And I put a couple pounds on, so. Hey, Steven, your new home's looking pretty good here downtown. You have any status update for us on when you guys are?
Well, the official word is sometime in June we're supposed to be moving in.
June, okay.
Although unconfirmed hearsay says that might be July,
Okay.
but I can't confirm or deny that.
We're excited for you guys. It's a great looking building. I really.
Yeah, it's gonna be nice.
So I just went into Chambers again. They had to call IT. So someone from our IT department's on their way down, had to reset the audio a couple of times, it sounds like. So still working on it. Appreciate the patience. Sorry for the inconvenience.
Thank you, Caleb.
Can anyone hear the council chambers? Talk to us.
I can hear you, Mr. Chairman.
Who have we got?
Councilmember Cavanagh, I can hear you.
Council member, Caleb's got a thumbs up. Looks like we could be in business, folks.
I can hear you.
Okay. Whatever that last switch was seems to have been the right one. Okay, fellas, are we going to stay good, do you think?
Ryan Lancaster, can you hear me? Okay. We've got our throat cleared, it sounds like.
Okay, are you recording yet?
All right, Mr. Chair, you are recording and live on YouTube.
Okay, folks, sorry for that. Took a cast of thousands trying to figure out how to get us back on. Appreciate your patience. It's 3:57 p.m. and with that, I will call the May 3rd, 2021 meeting of the Meridian Transportation Commission meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the roll call. David Ballard.
Here.
Zachary Shoemaker.
Here.
Ron Lancaster.
Present. Here.
Steed is here. Tracy Hopkins, I believe, is out of the state. I got an email from him. Stephen Lewis.
Here.
Jared Smith.
Here. I'm here, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Tom's here. Joseph Leckie. Don't hear from Joseph.
Here. Sorry, I'm here.
Is here. Commissioner Cavanagh is here. Was. Sean Martin. I don't hear Sean. Tony Teasdale.
Present, thank you.
Tony's present. Ion Updike. I did not hear. Alyssa Taysom
Here.
is here, and Justin Price.
Here.
Okay, thank you, and again, apologies. First item, the next item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. I have one change, and that is item 3, the Chendon at Black Cat citizen complaint. Our information is that the citizen who brought that to our attention may not be available in that particular at that particular time. So I'm going to have Ms. Carson keep an eye out for him appearing on Zoom or walking into the room here, and we will pick that item up when he appears or at the end of the new business action items. Any other changes to the agenda anyone has?
I'll move to adopt the agenda.
We have a motion to adopt the agenda. Do we have a second?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. The second was Stephen Lewis, I believe.
Yes.
In favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Okay, next item is the approval of the minutes of April 5. Does anyone have any notations, comments, changes to the agenda? I have one item, but I will wait to see if anybody else goes first.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lancaster.
No, it's
Oh, sorry. I
here.
saw the wrong block.
On the in the April 5th minutes, in the approval of the minutes section, it doesn't say who motioned or seconded. It was Mr. Lancaster who made the motion and Commissioner Ballard who seconded it. On the adoption of the agenda, I seconded it, but I didn't write down who made the original motion.
Ms. Carson, are you picking those up?
Mr. Chair, I got on the adoption of the agenda, it was second by Mr. Lewis, and on the approval of the minutes, it was a motion by Lancaster and a second by Lewis. Did I get that correct?
He says yes.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Not only good note taking, but kept up with them to read them later. Anyone else have anything? The item that I have is On page 5 of the packet, staff communications number 5, third paragraph. It's written that Ms. Carson noted the four-way stop request at Vanderbilt and Litchfield, that ACHD has already addressed this item and responded to the resident. Mr. Lancaster, a question for you on that item. My memory is that during the discussion of that intersection, I thought I heard you indicate that your school zone subcommittee would take a look at that particular location.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. And unfortunately, I don't have a report for you. We haven't had the chance to meet yet since our last meeting.
But it is correct that y'all do plan to take a look at it.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chairman. At least have a discussion.
Ms. Carson, I would suggest that that item have that information added to it in the minute. Any other comments, notations on the minutes from April 5? That being said, I would take a motion to adopt the minutes as presented with the one change noted.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Ballard,
Second.
second by Tom Leclerc. Other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, next item is old business, transportation projects update. Mrs. Carson.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the transportation projects update starts on page 7. The new items, as always, are highlighted in bold, and I will go over some of those updates. The Linda Road Overland to Franklin, City Council did approve an allocation of $2.5 million dedicated to building that overpass. They approved that at their meeting on April 20th. So another request was sent to have that added to the STIP. On page 9, Lake Hazel and Eagle Signal has a 95% design. That full design is available at the end of the packet in staff communications if you want to review. I will note that staff still continues to have concerns about pathway crossings behind cars and at local streets. And that is in this design as well as past designs that we've discussed as a commission. On page 10, Linder Road to Locust Grove Road on the Chendon West corridor has some flaggers controlling traffic during construction as there's a temporary traffic configuration there. There is more detail on that update available in the staff communications section of the packet as well. Page 11, the State Highway 69 CUNA to Meridian traffic study is not directly related to the traffic study, but it was an item of note that ITD will be doing an interim improvement at Calderwood and State Highway 69 to restrict left turn movements from the eastbound and westbound traffic there on Calderwood. There was a review after the accident that occurred recently. There is more detailed information in the staff communications section of the packet on that item as well. On page 12, the 2nd Street Broadway to Pine project was submitted to Compass for consideration of a $25,000 project development grant. And in transit news, Rides to Wellness service launched today for Meridian veterans to get rides to the VA Medical Center in Boise. And I can stand for questions on any project updates.
Personal comment, in case any of you are thinking about going eastbound on Chendon through the Linder intersection, I would strongly suggest you may think about another route. I've gotten caught in it twice. It backs up almost all the way to 10 Mile, choking it down to one lane eastbound, and then it breaks into a left turn and one lane straight. And it's going to be really nice once they get that paved, but last time I went through it a day or two ago, it wasn't done yet. Anything else from anyone on the future projects comments.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
So if I can go back to the Lake Hazel and Eagle Signal for a moment.
Okay.
We were presented with the plan set at the end of our packet. I believe it was the 90%, or rather the 95% plans. And it still has the side path intersection set back from Eagle Road. And I know we've talked about this before in this commission. And as Miranda says in the summary, city staff and city council also have concerns about this. I'd like to make a motion that this commission send a letter of support to city council that we also, as a commission, agree that this should be changed. Just to give some support to staff and to council that this crossing needs to be moved up to the intersection, not set back the way it is. This is on page 69 of the packet, in case you want to look at exactly what I'm talking about.
Mr. Ballard. It was. We have a motion and a discussion to have the Transportation Commission send a letter of support to the council for the change he was talking about at that intersection. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second the motion so that we can have a discussion.
We had a second from Mr. Ballard.
Okay, didn't hear that. Thank you.
Chairman Steed, we can't hear Mr. Ballard. I think his microphone is off.
No, it was turned on.
All right, maybe he needs to just get closer.
Okay, can you hear my second of the motion now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, better. Yeah.
Okay, any discussion on the motion?
Well, I think, Mr. Chairman, I think this is a good idea. We do have concerns with that pathway crossing between cars, the streets, and visibility conflicts. And I think that's good to express that to council again and make it clear that, you know, the city wants to have a different design. We weighed in before, and we just need to keep going, I guess.
Anyone else? A question for Mr. Hood and Ms. Carson. Do you have enough information to draft a letter for the TC?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I should have enough information and you and I can work to have that signed and sent to council.
Okay, and Mr. Hood says that he's good with it also. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Ms. Carson, you and I will get that letter done. Okay, moving forward to the new business items.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I do have a question
Mr.
on.
Ballard first.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
If I can go back on Linder Overland to Franklin,
Okay, I'm sorry, yeah.
the overpass there. I'd note that there's the formation of a task force to support that, and that'll be meeting later this month. I was drafted to sit on that task force.
That's why you know about it. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Lancaster.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a question about that too. This might be for Miranda or perhaps for Councilman Cavanagh, but I guess what does this look like? So where City Council has approved a budget allocation of $2.5 million, is that like a pledge or, I mean, an earmark, I guess, because, you know, unless I'm mistaken, there's not a way to spend that 2.5 million today. So I guess I'm curious what that actually does.
Mr. Council Member?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to respond. So, Commissioner Lancaster, I think the intention of the council is to follow through on some of the communication that has happened from our mayor, county commissioners, and highway district into their joint communication to the state about this project. And again, you guys know me long enough to know I'm not very articulate, but it's essentially we're putting our money where our mouth is and saying that we as the council have appropriated this. So it is a budget amendment. The dollars are there. Should this project move forward, we would allocate them. Similar in a manner that we did with the Locust Grove overpass in 2006, 2007. I believe the council appropriated, if Caleb's on the call, he may correct me if I'm wrong, I think about $1.5 million for right-of-way purchase. We ultimately only spent a little over $1 million, but the council budgeted for it. And I think it would be the city council's intention, again, that we would use those same dollars for purchase of right-of-way to get this project accelerated.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Lancaster?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thank you, Councilman.
Any other discussion of the transportation projects? Okay, new business, item number 4. Is Sergeant Frazier with us for an update from the police department? I haven't seen him today. Do you know anything, Ms. Carson?
I haven't heard from him today, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we will move on to item 5. Mr. Leclerc, the Ordinance and Development Subcommittee met this afternoon at 2:30. Do you have a report for us?
Yes, I do. We have we had a bill go through the legislature. We've been following it. We think it's if everything goes well in the legislature, it will become effective July 1st. And it does a little clarification of state law and utility vehicles. And so we were watching this to see if they were going to make that change or not. We pretty much want to restrict utility vehicles, ATVs, and golf carts to local streets and allow, and permit them to operate there with no trouble, but to restrict them on our collector and arterial streets. And so we have, this ordinance was rewritten with that focus, and it's been checked against the current state law and what will be the future state law in this area. And our language is similar. We're calling all these vehicles off-road vehicles like the state does. So I think it'll be a good clarifying ordinance that's in our packet today. We looked over this, had some questions, and the committee wants to report to the full commission that this is ready to go. We'd like to have the commission take up this draft ordinance at our June meeting and hopefully adopt it and forward it to the city council. As a part of that process, we think another public hearing is needed. And so those are our requests for a agenda item for June for off-road vehicles, for a new off-road vehicle ordinance for the city of Meridian. And so we recommend that we do that, and if will be up to the chairman to say, okay, we'll put it on the agenda, or if there's any objections from council members, we'd like to hear those now. So that's the next steps we foresee, and that's what we're recommending that the commission do. And so that's my report from our meeting.
Thank you, sir. A copy of the latest version of Mrs. Kane's endless efforts to rewrite this thing was in the packet today. It is not an action item that we can act on other than to, as Mr. Leclerc said, recommend or have it on our agenda in June. And the mayor's office has indicated to Ms. Kane and to myself that they would prefer to see Transportation Commission hold another public hearing on it before it actually moves forward to council, if that's where the commission ends up wanting it to go. We don't need a motion, but we would like to know by consensus if the commission members are okay with this appearing on the agenda next month, and including with that a public hearing notice.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Ballard,
I have one question.
need to get up closer to your mic. There you go.
So, Mr. Leclerc, in the definition of an off-highway vehicle, I haven't looked at this, but it includes a motorbike. Is
Well,
that-
may
is
have to
that
have some,
different than a motorcycle?
it's, we'll have our drafter clarify it. We did discuss that today. What we think we're referring to there is like an off-road bicycle, an off-road motorbike that would not normally be fully licensed or something. And so that's why that's mentioned in the language in this ordinance. So, but Emily can clarify better than I probably. So I'll let her
Well,
take a
does
shot.
that also include the bicycle that has the small engine affixed to it? That's a motorbike. Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
Commissioner
Thank
Ballard.
you.
So a motorbike is a term of art. It's defined in Idaho Code Section 67711019. It's mentioned also in Title 49, Section 49.114.10. So it's its own thing. It's its own type of vehicle. It specifically says it's not an electric assisted bicycle. So e-bikes are different. Motorcycles are also separately defined, so those are different. A motorbike is a specific type of vehicle that is used off highway. So it's an OHV that's in the same family as the UTVs, the ATVs, and the golf carts or other specialty off-road vehicles. So there are two distinct types of vehicle, and they're really well defined in state codes. So that's a term of art that means something specific. The definition of off-highway vehicle that you see in that draft ordinance mimics the definition of off-highway vehicle in the state code, which means ATVs, motorbikes, specialty off-highway vehicles, or UTVs. And specialty OHVs include golf carts.
Thank you. I just hadn't looked at that. But it still begs the question, there are still bicycles out there that have an engine, not an electric motor, but an engine affixed to it. Is there a separate definition? And I can look at it, Ms. Kane, I apologize.
I believe it's a moped. That's the colloquial term. And I don't know that oh yes, it is a moped. It's considered a moped under the state code.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Ms. Kane, with two of us having brought that question up today, I appreciate your being able to cite chapter and verse. And I'm sure Mr. Lewis wrote those references down just in case we forget what they were. But do we need in the city ordinance that's being considered, do we need to parenthetically clarify motorbikes in order to not get people excited when they don't need to be?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I would recommend that you not. However, if that's a concern, I would recommend then that you also define all the other terms, the ATV, specialty off-highway vehicle and UTV. They do each have their own definition in Title 67, Chapter 71. Perhaps a reference to that, to the Idaho codes meanings of those words, of those terms would be a little bit better, because they're really intended to match the state code definitions of those terms.
I would agree that putting a reference to the state code that we're coming from in that 751A paragraph might be a good way to go with that.
Okay, I'll make that change.
Other comments from anyone?
Mr. Chairman?
I heard Mr. Ballard first, and then I think Mr. Lewis after that.
So, Ms. Kane, if I read your explanation on page 21, Meridian would carve out what would otherwise be legal under the state law and prohibit these on Meridian collectors or Meridian arterials, but allow them on local streets.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Ballard, that's correct. So the new law, House Bill 129, when that is effective, UTVs, ATVs, golf carts will be legal on all streets in Idaho unless a local municipality restricts or otherwise regulates their use within city limits. And the Idaho Transportation Department has jurisdiction to regulate their use on state highways. So as of July 1, this ordinance would be more restrictive than the state law.
Thank you.
Mr. Lewis.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say that I like the new draft. It's much cleaner. It's shorter, only one page instead of 3. I think it accomplishes everything they wanted to accomplish. I think I heard you say, Mr. Chairman, that council wants us to have a hearing of our own and not send it to them without. Is that correct?
No, the council did not.
Oh.
The mayor has indicated, I believe to Mrs. Kane and to myself, that without direction to us, has indicated that he felt that the Transportation Commission should have a second public hearing on this before it moves to council, if that's what we wish to do in the long run.
Okay. I guess where I was going with this was before you said that, I was going to recommend that we send it to council today and not have a second hearing on the commission, because we've already had one, and the new law says that the city council must have a hearing. So if we have one and then council has to have one, then we're kind of double dipping again. It just seems like a lot of public meetings. Get over that.
My understanding is the council, in order to pass an ordinance, is required to hold a public hearing. So regardless of what we do, they will hold one.
Right. So I just personally didn't see the need for another hearing at the commission level.
Councilmember Cavanagh, excuse me.
Hot seat.
Any input?
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The seat is getting very warm now. I try really hard, as you all know, in this ex officio role, to provide insight and input from the council perspective and not to direct or drive your guys' conversation. I think that if you as a body believe that it's prudent to have an additional public hearing before bringing forth a recommendation of any form to the council, that seems appropriate. If you as a body feel that you have achieved the proper amount of public testimony to help render the decision that you want to make or plan to make, then you wouldn't necessarily need to. But that's hard for me. Again, I I appreciate being a council member because it's a collaborative decision. So I would ultimately leave it up to you as the body to make that determination as to what you think is best. I don't anticipate if you did or didn't have a public hearing that the council will respond one way or another. I think that we want to let you to let this process play out as you think best, and then whatever gets sent, if anything gets sent to the council, then we'll act in due time.
Mr. Lewis, does that help at all?
Yes, it does, Mr. Chairman. Guess I'm inclined to make that motion that we take the draft ordinance that's dated 4/5 and send it to council without further hearings on our part.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to forward the draft ordinance that's in today's packet to the city council. Mrs. Kane, do you have any input at this time?
Mr. Chair, does the commission wish to include a recommendation regarding passage of this ordinance or moving forward with the public hearing and passage of this ordinance?
Restate your question, please.
Mr. Chair, the motion on the floor, I believe, is to move the ordinance forward to city council. Is it to include a recommendation from this commission?
Mr. Chairman, if I could answer that since it's my motion. I would amend my motion to state that we as a commission recommend approval of this draft ordinance and that the city council hold a hearing on it.
As for lack of a second.
Uh,
Yeah, sir. Let's
Mr. Chairman,
go.
this Councilmember Cavanagh.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it sounds like maybe you were conducting some commission business, and I believe that we could not hear what was going on in chamber. So,
Yeah, we could not.
which may explain. It sounds like maybe you didn't get you didn't get a second. It was probably because we couldn't hear the business that was being conducted.
We had a motion with a second. But after Ms. Kane's comments, the motioner changed his motion, and the seconder would not continue his second on the revised motion.
Mr. Chair,
The second motion failed for lack of a second. Does that put us back to voting on the first motion, Ms. Kane? Help me here.
Mr. Chair, I think no one knew that it was time to second the motion. I think we lost transmission as soon as you heard Mr. Lewis amend the motion. I'd suggest that we go back to that point.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to read back what the motion was that Mr. Lewis,
The original motion or the amended
the
motion?
amended motion that you were looking for a second on?
No, let me tell you what I heard. I heard originally a motion from Mr. Lewis that was seconded by Mr. Ballard. Mrs. Kane weighed in. Mr. Lewis changed his original motion, and Mr. Ballard refused to second the amended motion. So Mr. Lewis's
And
amended
Mr.
motion.
Chairman, we didn't hear anything about you offering that to us, and we did not hear Mr. Ballard's comment. So we're a little behind out here in the Zoom
Okay.
land.
Gotta get
Oh.
Mr. Ballard closer onto that mic. Okay,
I'll second the amended motion.
okay,
This Commissioner Lancaster.
okay. Mr. Lewis, would you please restate your amended motion, which we do
Ye-
have a second to?
Yes, yes, the amended motion is that we send this draft ordinance dated 4/5/21 to city council with our recommendation that it be passed and that the city council hold a hearing on it.
Okay, there's the motion. We have a second discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Smith,
I
I
can't hear you.
just do have one question from Councilman Cavanagh about, and not seeking direction, but some insight in more of a general level about his opinion on the potential added value of public hearings at the commission level. Are there instances that you can recollect, or is there theoretical value if I guess beyond the additional opportunity for someone's voices to be heard, but is there a logistical or a almost lawmaking value that there would be added that we might be missing out on by passing this? Just I want to get your input.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
yes, sir, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Jared, it's a very, very valuable question to ask. And I think you ask any council member, you will likely get a different answer. Clearly, the reason we do public hearings is because we value citizens. The more hearings on a particular issue that exist without action, I think can be cumbersome and frustrating to members of the public. They give up time away from their family or from their jobs to come and testify. And the more of those that occur without action, one way or another, is disheartening. I've heard that from the public. I think it's also important to note, and Ms. Kane can confirm for me if I'm wrong, I can't recall a time since I've been the ex officio that this body has had a public hearing before this issue. So it's very likely possible that we haven't seen a lot of that. Now that's because this committee is really evolving and becoming more action oriented, which is to be commended. But we don't have a lot of track history here about kind of, the amount of public hearings that this commission has generated. Ultimately, while the public hearing process is designed to allow the public to voice their opinion, that is because you as commissioners want to hear that to help render your decision. So if you all felt, boy, I feel really strong coming out of the last public hearing about how I feel about this issue, and you don't anticipate more testimony one way or another changing your mind, and then forwarding on to the city council where we will then have yet another public hearing would be appropriate. If you still have some confusion about this issue or unaware or would find value in hearing from members of the public more on this, then I think it's well within your purview, and you should. Right? We wouldn't want any member of this body to make a decision without feeling like they have all the information they need to make that decision.
Thank you, sir. With that being said, realize that where the council is required to hold a public hearing on ordinances, we are not.
Mr. Chairman?
Well, yes, sir. Mr. Leclerc.
Thank you. When we talked about this in our committee, we talked about this very thing, and there was on the one hand, there is the interest by the mayor that we have a hearing here. So I wanted to sort of reiterate that. But on the other hand, thinking this through, if we can't hold a hearing till June anyway, and it probably would be the council would pick it up maybe the next day. So we'd have a public hearing here, and then a public hearing at the same building on the same subject the next day when the council takes up the issue. So I think I'm more in favor of this motion, and I appreciate us discussing it, because I don't see it seems like we're asking a lot of the public to come out 2 days in a row to say the same things, and who knows what difference a lot of that testimony will make. So we do have a good record. We did a good workshop type hearings in our minutes, and gathered a lot of good information from that other hearing. But I think it is okay with me, really, if we take this action now and just forward this ordinance as we amended it slightly one more time today. But I think it's ready to go. And it's pretty much just a clarifying type ordinance, and hopefully we'll go right through the council. So I like the motion. I'm going to vote for it.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ballard.
if we step back for a minute, we're an advisory commission. There is an opportunity for the public to make some comments. So there is an opportunity to hear what the public has to say about this ordinance. We don't make a decision. We have three choices. Recommend City Council to take up the ordinance, recommend that they hold a hearing, or say we don't recommend the ordinance. Our function is to gather information to pass to the City Council. So yes, that would be a chore on the first meeting in June as such. But it gives the public an opportunity to come in and weigh in on this. Whether it's non-binding in the sense that we don't make a decision other than to make a recommendation. So I think we'd be remiss if we didn't take up that opportunity to let the public come in and weigh in one more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Other comments by commission members? A question on my part to Mr. Lewis. Your motion that we're discussing was to send this forward to City Council. Did that include what I will refer to as a do pass?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that this commission recommend that they do pass this draft ordinance.
And Mr. Lancaster, was that included in your second?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Did we get far enough with the first motion that we have to go back and handle it now and consider this as having been passed as a second motion, or are we good to go?
Mr. Chair, I believe that because the seconder did not second the second motion, it's not considered a friendly motion. The first motion is still live and has to be voted on. If it also passes, there's really not a conflict, though there's a bit of a discrepancy. I guess it makes sense for those who voted yay to the second motion to vote nay to the first.
Isn't that just backwards?
Well, Mr. Chairman, didn't the second motion amend the first? So basically we're voting on the same thing now?
Ms. Kane?
Mr. Chair, this is a pretty gentle, very subtle issue in Robert's rules, and I guess I won't pretend to know the answer except to say that given that it's not a friendly motion, I believe the first motion is still on the floor.
Yes, but it just was amended to include a due pass recommendation. But I think you're right. We do need to vote a second time, but basically we're voting again for the same motion with now with a different seconder.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
I hear you, but I don't see who that was. Mr. Lewis.
Yeah, that's me. So the question that we just voted on was whether to accept the amendment of a due pass recommendation to my original motion. Is that correct? And I asked that because because the original motion was that we send this to city council and recommend they hold a hearing. And then the amended motion was we sent it to city council with a due pass recommendation and that they hold a hearing. Is that correct?
That's the way I remember it, and Ms. Carson is nodding in the affirmative.
Okay, so the vote that we just took was to amend the motion to add the due pass recommendation. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
In that case, excuse me, Mr. Chair, in that case, that distinction, the body has voted on the amendment, and the seconder on the initial motion is essentially overruled. So I think we're done.
But we do not need to vote on the first motion.
Correct.
Thank you, ma'am. I won't ask another question.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
Okay, thank you all very much. Moving along, we throw that into Councilmember Cavanaugh's plate. Transportation Commission Subcommittee's evaluation. You will remember that when the single subcommittee of this commission had other subcommittees added to join it, there was a statement made, comment made, plan made to look back after 6 months or so and see how the new subcommittees were operating. In addition to that, about maybe 3 months after those two additional subcommittees were created, we formed a fourth subcommittee. With that said, what we're looking for today is discussion of how you think things have been operating. I know that Tom LeClaire loves being chair of the busiest subcommittee of this commission. It hadn't been horrible, but we have been busy, and we've just passed up to city council what we've been working on for the most part. The other subcommittees are the school zone subcommittee, which is a longer lasting committee. Mr. Lancaster is chair of that. We also have the last added subcommittee of which we called a prioritization subcommittee, chaired by Jared Smith, which has met to outline their future work, I understand, and we're awaiting that. Mr. Ballard, you are chair of what we call the Product Review Subcommittee, and if my memory serves, I didn't check with you beforehand, y'all have had one meeting since you were formed?
We have had one meeting and had requested additional information before meeting again, and that has not moved forward to receive that additional information. But you are right, we've had one meeting.
Is that additional information something you're waiting on me for?
No, sir.
Okay, good. Is this something I can help you get?
Apologize, I'd have to go back and review.
Okay. Comments, discussion from Transportation Commission members on the 4 subcommittees that currently exist.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner.
Mr. Lancaster, I was afraid you were just about to disappoint me. Please go ahead.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think the structure is working out pretty well. I have to say that the chairman of the school subcommittee hasn't been doing his job very well in the last few months, but I probably need to recruit some help from Miranda on that if she's willing to help. But I think the structure is sound. I think the ordinance subcommittee has performed well, and that this is, the idea that we're trying to do. So my compliments to Commissioner LeClaire. And again, the school guy hasn't done so well, but I think the idea is still sound. So have my concurrence to go forward with this.
With things as they are. Okay. Other comments? I have a question for Mr. Ballard, if I might. Your committee is entitled Project Review Subcommittee. Do you think the title and the charge as in the bullet point in today's packet remains viable, and you wish for it to go ahead?
Yes.
With renewed emphasis on trying to find out whatever that was you were trying to find out?
Yes, and it may have been that other matters got busy. We just need to bring that item back to the surface.
Okay. Any other discussion? If there's no other discussion, we will consider this item closed, Ms. Carson, and that the 4 subcommittees continue as they are. Anybody else? Okay. We have just had, timing is perfect, the gentleman who raised the question, if not complaint, about the Chendon and Black Cat intersection enter the council chambers. Caleb, do you want to just introduce this enough so that we can let the gentleman speak, and then we will probably look back to you for input from city staff?
Sure. Mr. Chair, Caleb Hood, Planning Division Manager. So Mark Gerso is, I believe, who you just referenced, walked into council chambers. I've been in conversation with him. It's probably about 6 months ago. I didn't actually check the first time that he reached out to me to bring up the concern that he's going to express to you at the intersection of Black Cat and Chendon. There is a brief summary on this topic that begins on page 14 in your packet that kind of outlines some of that. So I won't just read that to you, but there is a little bit of the history there. The mayor's office has been engaged. We've been talking with ITD staff again over those roughly 6 months or so since that first phase of the STARS project with Costco and some of the roadway widening improvements associated with the Chendon West project were completed recently. So I'll probably just leave it at that for now. And like you said, Mr. Chair, can stand for any questions maybe at the end after Mark states his piece to you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Grisio, if you would like to approach the podium, state your name and address, please. Miranda, is that mic on for him? Okay. Yes, and as you could see on the television screens, you're speaking to myself, Mr. Ballard, Ms. Carson, and then the group that are on Zoom.
All right. Thank you for Miranda and the city for actually taking the time to hear this formal, informal complaint, I guess. We've been in discussions. I think initially it started at intersection, Caleb, you might correct me, I think that was completed sometime early last summer. Somewhere in that time frame, where the Black Cat light arterials and intersection was formally completed, but shortly thereafter, we've lived in, excuse me, 4544 West Sugar Tree Drive, Meridian, Idaho. We lived in that house. We moved in June from another home in another part of Spurwing Greens. We're now in Spurwing Heights. And I was watching as that intersection was being built. And I thought the whole time that there was going to be more of a completion. And then when the arterials went in, I began thinking to myself, these seem a little close to the highway to allow for an easy exit off the freeway or the highway there. And I thought that you guys were going to, well, I say you guys, the ITD, ACHG, I think is who I initially reached out to. I thought they were going to actually use as a template the half-mile to the east intersection where Tree Farm and
Mr. Chair, we can't hear again on the Zoom.
Tap and make sure that's the working mic. Okay, maybe a little closer if you can, without breaking your back leaning over. There you go. Thank you.
I can talk right in here. So I thought, again, the template that was going to be used was the intersection that had been completed maybe several years before, half a mile to the east. And it's the Sugar Tree and Chendon intersection. So as you're proceeding on Chendon to the west, there are 4 lanes, but as you're going west, there is a separate right-hand turn only lane that takes you onto Tree Farm and takes you out of the 60-mile-an-hour traffic that is right there on Chendon at that light there. So that did not happen at Black Cat, and the concern is this. Without that right-hand exit lane there, egress lane, the traffic is proceeding on you at approximately 60 miles an hour on average. And as you come up to that intersection and it's green, you have to come almost to a complete, maybe 5 to 8 mile an hour turn because it's a real sharp right. And actually, if you see the way that road meanders, if you've taken it, you have to really slow it down. Well, traffic is right behind you, and as they come up on you, they're having to hit the brakes. There's actually been one incident with me where they actually had to lock them up. It was a pickup truck. And then swerve into the other lane to keep from hitting me there. And then my wife has complained that traffic is actually coming up on her too fast. A few neighbors I've discussed this with, and I've not circulated this with a bunch of neighbors yet, but it is a traffic issue or a safety issue as you come up on there. I think somebody is going to get rear-ended really quickly in that right-hand lane as they have to come down to, like I said, 5 to 10 miles an hour to make that right-hand turn safely. And the traffic is proceeding behind you very quickly. Now, if everything's at a red light, that's a different story. We just wait and everybody proceeds. But it's when you're taking that right-hand turn with a green light that we have a safety issue. So that's it in a nutshell. Like I said, I'm hoping that we can resolve this sooner as opposed to later. I think I've talked to recently City of Meridian and ITD and ACHD, and it seems like at the end of the day, it wasn't budgeted properly, and therefore it wasn't planned properly. And I think the last I've heard is it's a funding issue between I believe there's 4 different developers on those 4 corners, Corey Barton being one of them, and 2 or 3 others that are building out those subdivisions there that discussions have to happen further with before we get additional funding. So I think, Caleb, correct me on the name of the woman from ITD who is it Jamie Kuntz, I believe, has done the research, and there is the right-of-ways to move those arterials over farther to have that right-hand exit lane built. So there will be a right-of-way. There is right-of-ways you guys have. The city has, I believe, to go ahead and do that safely. But as I understand it, ITD, ACHD, I believe, handles the highway, and ITD handles the Black Cat side or something like that. So I forget, the 2 of them have to come
I think it's
together.
the other way around.
Is it the other way? Okay. Highway district, you would think would be the highway, but anyway. So that's where we are right now, and I've been in discussions with probably ITD initially, as far back as July. And yeah, so we're sort of at a standstill right now until I think money is allocated proportionally for that intersection now.
Okay, thank you. If you're coming looking for money, you're in the wrong place. This commission doesn't have a penny. But we do have good information with people that are on either the commission or part of the staff. So with that, Caleb, I will, Mr. Hood, I will ask you to give the city's side of things.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to first start by saying, I mean, I generally agree with Mark's summary and his concerns. It's not an ideal situation out there. So I just wanted to kind of start there and recognize that this is not the ultimate configuration of this intersection, and kind of to his point, the planning and the budgeting, the phasing of this probably could have been done better. There was not a whole lot of coordination on this project between ITD and the city and ACH. Well, I can't speak for what ACHD and ITD, how much coordination they had. But this was, you know, a project largely the city didn't participate in, and probably could have paid a little bit more attention to it. Not that we controlled the design or anything like that, but if we would have had it and could have reviewed and commented, maybe we could have seen this potential issue for, again, potential rear end crashes happening at this intersection. Just again, maybe a little bit finer point on what Mark brings up. There is a plan to improve this intersection to its ultimate configuration. And there's a couple of different triggers that come about. As you'll see in that packet, and again, this has been shared through Jamie Kuntz at ITD. They did some preliminary analysis, some concept level design work to see if it could fit and how much it would cost. It was 260 something, 270 something. I have it here. Just as a rough planning level cost of 278,000, 279,000 roughly to retrofit this today. If the money were to fall out of the sky or otherwise be reprogrammed or prioritized or come to do this work, it'd be about, the estimate is anyways, $278,000 and some change. So we've been, again, talking with ITD. How can we make this happen? There are, I mean, just to be blunt, there's that money, there's other higher priorities at this point. I guess not that we won't continue to pursue this, but right now it doesn't rise to the level of some of the other roadway improvements where $250,000 roughly could be more beneficial. So I'm not saying that's the official city stance. I'm just saying that's kind of where we're at, is the city doesn't have just, you know, $300,000 laying around to throw at this. It was, again, a project done in coordination, you know, through ITD with the Costco developer to design and construct this. The city did not do any of that. We have worked with ITD to help them acquire some proportionate funds, as Mark said, from the developers, you know, generally around the intersection to get their proportionate share of what it will ultimately take to reconstruct the intersection. But we don't have those funds. The city will never have those funds. ITD doesn't have the funds currently deposited into their accounts to make that happen. So it really is a timing issue, a phasing issue. You know, I don't want to see any crashes happen there. I just don't know what to do at this point. And again, we'll continue the dialogue. It's just no one has the means to go and fix this problem right away. So hopefully that, I know it doesn't help much, but hopefully it at least helps you understand where we're at, what the conversations we've had, and what the plan is at this point going forward.
So currently, those of us that live on the east side of Black Cat are able to take an alternative route. We actually cut in on Tree Farm. Of course, that's not the design of what the intersections are supposed to do, but now we have to take the city streets, the neighborhood streets, and we add more traffic to those. And of course, there's little kids playing out there. And I'm thinking that the Highway District, City of Meridian, nor ITD or anybody wants a lot more traffic where kids are playing, chasing balls, dogs are running across these little neighborhood streets. But that's kind of what we're forced to do from a safety standpoint in the meantime. So it's just shifting it to a different type of possible danger there. I guess I would ask the question, there's two brand new developments going in there, one on the northwest side of that intersection, and one on the northeast side of that intersection. Between the two of them, I'm going to take a rough guess. You guys may have better estimates, but maybe 1,000 once we actually pull all the cars and then the drivers in. We have 6 drivers in our family, so, but if you add all those homes up and the number of drivers, there's probably going to be another 1,000 cars that will probably be added to that intersection there when those are built out. So this is not going to get better as we add more of those homes, filling out that intersection there. Again, northeast and northwest sides there, two brand new developments.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, if I can, I want to just maybe expand on that thought as well. So we have been in contact with Sam Johnson, who represents the developer on the northwest corner there. He shares these same concerns. He's trying to meet, and maybe I haven't been tracking it over the last couple of weeks, but David Miles in the mayor's office has been in communication with Sam Johnson. And there's a chance, and I don't want to guarantee anything, but there is a chance because Mr. Johnson is trying to sell lots and homes to people in that subdivision that you mentioned, and they're going to have some of these similar concerns. They are exploring the opportunity of the developers coming in and improving that intersection ahead of what ITD plans to do with phase 2 of the Chendon West project and making making it a 6-lane facility and reconstructing this intersection. So that is another rock we're trying to get the development community to step up and do this ahead of those again, the phasing plan that ITD currently has. Again, I don't want to guarantee anything, but that is something that is being discussed, and I think will benefit not only current but near future residents that are going to be accessing Black Cat at Chendon.
Yeah, I might add, I think we all live here, so we know he's probably not having to try very hard to sell these places right now, but it does create new issues, new safety issues as that neighborhood's building out. So he would do it, I would hope, out of more the goodness of his heart to know that the people he's moving into his neighborhoods are going to be safe and well taken care of. But as far as needing to do it to sell the homes, that's not part of the math here. So, all right. Well, again, Caleb, I appreciate you and the rest of the board's time here this morning or this afternoon. I think we all have a better understanding of what's going on. So I appreciate you making us time here.
Okay, and we're going to sit here and discuss this a little bit, see what other people have to input about it. So bear with us if you would.
Sure.
Question from Mr. Hood. The 51,000 that has been mentioned has been requested of the developer on the northeast corner of that intersection. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, yeah, that's the northeast corner. So the one I was just talking about with Mr. Johnson's the northwest corner.
So that would be, if it were to ever come about, would be additional money.
Additional
to the 51.
So the way that ITD, so this is where it gets a little bit more complex. When the project on the northwest corner was originally annexed and entitled, ITD did not request that developer deposit their proportionate share of Black Cat at Chendon. So there are comments from ITD when that project came through that the warrants would be there for them to mitigate their traffic impacts, to actually put in improvements, not just deposit a road trust or their proportionate share, but to make improvements. That's how kind of ITD was working or reacting to new projects. They've since changed, and the 51,000 and change that the northeast corner will be depositing with ITD will be its first deposit. So it's not additional. It's kind of a change in policy in how ITD is, again, do you exact it or require that improvement versus a proportionate share, and then eventually they pool the money and make the improvements through ITD's contractors. I wasn't trying to confuse things there, but it is a little bit confusing.
Well, I'm not, I'm gonna try one more time and then I'm gonna get away from being confusing. The 51 is a request from ITD to the Northeast developer for $51,000 of mitigation money for that intersection that has not been paid yet, possibly because ITD doesn't have a escrow account to put it in, but it's believed that it does exist and at some point can be obtained. Your speaking a moment ago was about a second developer on the opposite corner that might be willing to put up money as well.
That's a pretty fair summation, although I will just put the caveat in there. That second project you mentioned, was actually the first developer. And again, they aren't required to put any money in.
Understood.
Yes.
Understood. Commissioners, questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
This is Zach. And maybe Mark knows this, and I feel silly for not knowing this. I actually live in Bainbridge, but when you're traveling east on Chendon and you come to the Black Cat intersection, is there a turn lane heading south on Black Cat? So if I'm going the opposite direction of what you're saying, is there a turn lane onto Black Cat? Or is it the same issue on the opposite side of the street?
There's 3 lanes there. There's 2 through lanes, and there is a left-hand turn lane there.
Okay.
I don't come that often and take a right. From that, I come and take a left when I'm coming from the west. You're coming from the west, right?
Well, if I'm traveling if I'm traveling east on Chendon from, say, Napa or Caldwell, can I turn south on Black Cat with a turn lane similar to what you're doing, heading west? Is there a turn lane turning, or do we have the same issue on the north and south side of the street?
Again, we have 3 lanes there.
Okay.
2 through lanes and a left-hand turn for sure. Somebody else may
There,
want to comment.
there is a right turn lane there.
Okay, so there's just not a right turn lane heading.
Because so what happened is, for Chendon with the current construction, it widened it to the complete plan to the south. And in the future,
Ms. Carson?
Mr. Chair, I apologize. That was my fault. I did just hit the mute button. I'm sorry. I could feel my face turn red. I accidentally muted him while he was talking.
that's okay. Nobody likes to hear me talk. It's fine.
Mr. Price, if you would please start over. I didn't hear you, and then Ms. Carson cut you off. Inadvertently.
No problem. Yes, so everything on the south side of Chendon has been built for our long-term plan, right, to these corridor plan. So there is a right turn lane for everything heading southbound. So there at Black Cat, there is a right turn lane to head south.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, comments from commissioners?
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
it
Leclerc.
sounds like as this develops, we'll get improvements, but couldn't we just, doesn't ITD have a way of putting up a sign, caution turning traffic? It seems like we could warn motorists that, to take it easy. Part of the thing here is these roads are kind of out in the open and development's coming, but it's not all there. And I think people are used to driving pretty fast on them. And so I think we need to, if we could get a yellow sign that said caution turning traffic, it might help avoid accident there. Is that something that could be done right away?
I'm trying to think of a sign, and I may need to ask for Mr. Lancaster's help. Typically, the sign for this type of situation is an intersection sign. But since there's already a signal there, that's much better than a sign saying there's an intersection when there's a signal. I can't think of another MUTCD approved sign that would be appropriate for that situation. I understand where you're coming from, but I can't think of one offhand that would be better than having a signal. Mr. Lancaster, am I correct in that? Or Mr. Lewis, you know, as well.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Sir.
Commissioner Lancaster. If I can respond to that?
Yes, sir, please.
Okay, so I'm trying to stay out of this one, but
You did a really good job until you got thrown in under the
yeah,
bus.
no, it's
You may wanna
fine. So
recuse yourself.
Miranda can mute you if it helps.
well, I can talk on this topic, this specific topic. So yeah, generally we wouldn't I'll echo what Justin said. So generally you wouldn't have a warning sign for vehicles traveling in the same direction, right? So you might sign for vehicles entering the road or the highway from a side street, but not in the same direction. You know, like Justin was saying, the signal is a pretty good indication that there's something different up here, right? So yeah, I am not aware of a sign either. And if, you know, I'm sure you've all heard me say in this commission that fewer signs is better than more signs. You know, choose a few that matter rather than a whole bunch that have varying degrees of importance, right? So yeah, I'll echo what Justin said. I would not sign anything here.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ballard.
the answer seems to be to have a turn lane. So what steps can be taken to build the turn lane? And I get it that people are working on it, and I get it that money is tight and you try to allocate it. But I think the focus should be, what does it take to build this turn lane? It benefits not just Mr. Garuzzo here, seems to benefit what he projects to be another 100 homes. So maybe a lone voice there, but I think the focus should be, what can we do to build that turn lane? And if it's a timing question, then that's the timing question. And I get it, cutting through neighborhoods, I don't appreciate that, but seems to be an alternative. But that's the path forward that I would focus on, whether that's next month, next year, 2 years, whatever. Figure out how to get it built. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Comments, thoughts?
Can I just say one more thing?
Yes, sir.
I think all of us have been around long enough to know driving patterns the last 10 to 15 years and more, certainly, with combination cell phones, but even just cars as they're being built now. There's a lot more complexity, a lot more things to distract us within the car. I think a lot of drivers are driving a little more distracted too, so I think that's adding to the impetus of what's happening in this situation here too. I think there's just a little bit more distracted driving, and that's not something we're going to change overnight in this meeting for sure. But I think that's adding to the issue here. Yes, and we see a light up there. We should all be aware that there's stuff going on, even when it says green. Although, you know, it's really easy to say it's a green light, therefore we're in a safe zone. And like I said, it's that the way that's shaped of that intersection. And again, I encourage all of you guys to go west on that on Chendon and take that hard right on there. Look at how much you have to slow down, and just imagine somebody 60 miles an hour barreling down on you quickly, and like commute traffic or something. So anyway, that's it.
Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate it a lot.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is number 7, staff communications. Ms. Carson, we can open them back up. I had them open until the gentleman decided he wished to say something to finish.
Oh, okay. No,
I
no,
thought we had, anybody have anything I cut off?
I apologize.
Apparently not.
I wasn't trying to beat it up. I thought that, okay, I stand corrected. I'll sit back and keep my mouth shut.
Ms. Carson, anything on item 7?
Mr. Chair, the Transportation Commission staff communication starts on page 25 there. I did this in the same format. I didn't hear any objections to the new format at the last meeting or afterwards, so I'm going to continue doing it that format until somebody asks me not to. So the first item, commission reappointments. Stephen Lewis, Tracy Hopkins, and Jared Smith were reappointed to this commission. So yay, congratulations, you're still here. The second item, Highway 16, there was question on Highway 16 about allowing that to continue down McDermott Road, and there was some clarification from ITD on why that isn't continuing down McDermott Road at this time. The third item there, this State Highway 69 Meridian Road at Calderwood, covered that in the project updates. This is that explanation of what that new interim traffic configuration will look like at that intersection after a lot of back and forth between the different agencies involved and affected by that. I-84 corridor, Compass and ITD are collaborating on a corridor operations study for I-84. So in your packet, there is a summary from Compass and ITD on the feedback that they received. The last 2 items in the packet were covered in the projects updates. So at this point, I can stand for any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Carson on the staff communications section of the agenda, of the packet?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lancaster.
I do have one question. I think I'm okay in asking this because I wasn't involved in this discussion, but on the on the State Highway 69 at Calderwood conversation. So this all looks fine, but it leads to a question for me. And perhaps Miranda or Justin, this ultimately comes to you. I don't need a response, but it's like a topic that it brings up for me. So I've been on this commission long enough to remember when we sent a letter to ITD District 3 asking for speed study on Eagle Road and on Meridian Road south of I-84. And ITD did a speed study on Meridian Road south of I-84. And as I recall, lowered a speed limit in part because of vehicles turning out from Calderwood. And so if that is no longer the case, I wonder if conditions have changed and another speed study is appropriate. As I recall, it was part involved traffic coming into Overland and part traffic turning at Calderwood. So that's the details I'm remembering. So is it appropriate for a reconsideration there or reevaluation, I guess?
Ms. Carson.
So I should, just to clarify, and then I'll let Mr. Price answer your question in more detail, but there will still be traffic turning on to Calderwood. It's just a restricted left out from Calderwood. Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and I guess that, that's still significant. That there's no traffic turning from Calderwood. That's a significant change to the operation of the intersection. But thanks, Miranda.
Does that answer your question about whether or not a new speed study is, or traffic, was it a traffic study is indicated?
Mr. Chairman, well, no, it doesn't, and I don't need an answer here, but, you know, perhaps that's a question to be considered. Is a new speed study appropriate here? So
Okay, so you're not expecting an answer, you're putting that out there to get people thinking about it.
that's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mr.
Any other-
Chairman, would you like me to address this now?
He's let you off the hook if you wish to be gotten off the hook, it sounds like,
Well,
but if
and-
you'd like to address it, please go ahead.
Well, I can take a little hook and then I'll jump off the hook. How's that? So the other part of this is there is a study going on right now, which is going to change the whole corridor. So when we're looking at, once we make these changes at Calderwood, definitely once the entire corridor is redone and that plan is put in place, a new speed study would be appropriate. Depending on timing, we may wait until after that, if it makes sense, you know, to get a few years. If the long-term plan isn't going to actually be completed for a number of years, maybe it's appropriate, but my best guess at this point is we probably wait until the entire corridor is put in place and then do a speed study for the whole area. That's my first take on it. Now I'll jump off the hook.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions on staff communications? Okay, next item is future meeting topics. Ms. Carson, I believe you can strike a line through number 8.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Since that has been sent to council. The downtown Meridian parking study, we've got 6 minutes on the council chamber clock. I'm not looking for full 6 minutes. Would you like to give us 2 sentences on that? You indicated to me you have some knowledge of it, just to get us excited about hearing it next month.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So myself with an intern, we did a very limited downtown parking study. There was no occupancy survey done because of COVID, but we looked at past parking surveys, past parking surveys, current availability and code. And so we analyzed those and produced a report, and I'll bring that report next month.
Looking forward to it. I don't know if there's anything on the other future meeting topics that needs to be said this evening. With that, I will ask if there's,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ballard.
in your crystal ball, when will we be in person?
Funny you should ask that, sir. I'm shocked. That's twice today. We were the two that asked about the definition of the motorbike or whatever it was, and now we're both thinking about the same thing there. I inquired of Ms. Carson before the meeting today if she had any idea what the city's position was about meetings, meaning whether or not the Transportation Commission could consider meeting in person starting next month. She indicated that she did not have a firm feeling for that, but would inquire. So what I plan to do is to put it out there between now and the next month's meeting to see if if you would like to meet in person. I think we would continue to make Zoom available for anyone that didn't, I would suspect. If y'all would like to go ahead and indicate right now whether or not you would be interested in coming back to in-person meetings, that would be helpful. Doesn't necessarily mean it could happen, but we could at least know that. Mr. Lancaster?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, for what it's worth, I've been planning to come to the last 2 meetings in person, but I had meetings that ran right up to this one, and admittedly, it was convenient just to say, well, I'm just going to click Zoom and do it that way today. So I'm ready to start meeting or coming down there to City Hall again. That's fine with me. Again, I would have liked to have been there. So there's some value in being there, and yeah, I'd like to restart bringing myself down there, whether it's, whether we all have to be there or not. I'd like to start personally being there. So
Comments from anyone else? Of course, as you have seen from Mr. Ballard and myself, you can come in person anyway. I do think we should get the city's acquiescence before we declare these are going to be totally public meetings again, and we don't have that. So we'll keep that in mind and look toward it. I find it easier to chair the meetings from the dais as opposed to being on Zoom, even though I've done that. And I do like the fact that all of you are right, except for Mr. Ballard, who I can hear right next to me, are right in front of me, and I don't have to spend the entire 2 hours whipping my head left and right to see who's speaking. So there's that advantage to the Zoom meetings. Okay, anyone else have anything this afternoon?
Mr. Chair, if I may really quickly,
You may really quickly.
just a reminder that I have your volunteer appreciation gifts in my office when you want to pick those up. No rush. They're just sitting on my desk.
Okay. I'll pick mine up. I'll remember to take it with me. Mr. Hood.
Mr. Chair, I have one more thing since
Please.
Miranda brought up something similar. I have heard from 3 of you that are interested in attending the State of the City address. It's past the deadline that I put in my email, but if you are still interested, I can forward on your request. I don't know. There are limited seats. I don't know that they've all been spoken for, but if you're at all interested, please let me know and I will forward that to the mayor's office via the Chamber of Commerce. So let me know if you're interested on attending the mayor's State of the City address as soon as possible, please.
I know I sent mine in early, and you acknowledge that you got my request.
Sir.
Do we expect a response saying you are invited, or how's that going to work?
Great question, Mr. Chair. I do not know how this feedback loop will occur. I was just asked to reach out to you. So I am sharing the 3. I've got, just for the record, I've got you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Lancaster, and then I just spaced his name. He's out of town.
McKinney.
Tracy Hopkins. Thank you. Sorry. So those are the 3 that I've heard from. If anyone else is interested, please let me know as soon as possible. I do not know confirmation when that will come back, though.
Okay, folks, with that, it's 5:30 on the clock on the wall. We will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Ballard, softly in my right ear, which is my better ear, made a motion to adjourn. Mr. Lewis, was that a second?
Yeah, I'll take second.
Mr. Lewis takes second. Motion and second. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Y'all, councilmen, we appreciate your input today. Most helpful to get some reading of what the council may or may not be thinking, and we will not hold you to it.
Appreciate that last part, Mr. Chairman.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye all.